A system does not work if everybody is not part of that system and making it work. But because overwhelmingly the staff wanted to do this and we had multiple staff votes on moving forward with this.
Welcome to Principal Office Hours, where we swear there's no detention slip waiting for you. Just real talk from real principals who've survived everything from budget apocalypses. What does it mean to be a hedgehog? And how do you use that concept to take a school that is struggling from the challenges of COVID and turning it into a federal blue ribbon school? Today, we interview the principal of an elementary school that had trouble with math, ELA, reading, and chronic absenteeism, and in a short span of 3 years, managed to turn that around and achieve amazing accolades. So do stay tuned to find out their secret sauce in today's episode. Our guest today had a 28-year career in education, and this has taken him to Japan, to Spain, to multiple states in the US. He has taught in multiple secondary and elementary schools. He was the principal of the year in Eugene, Oregon. And at his current school, he earned the US Department of Education Blue Ribbon Award and the California Distinguished School Award. Such a great pleasure to have with us in our studios today, Jeremy Paco Furlan. He's the principal of John Muir Elementary School in Berkeley, California. Paco, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, CT.
Paco, it's so great to have you, and I'm just looking through your achievements. It is very impressive, I have to say. And the community of John Muir Elementary School is very lucky to have you as a principal. Tell us a little bit more about that community, the students and the families that you serve.
Great. We're a school of about 300 elementary school students, and we serve TK all the way up to the 5th grade. And about 30% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. So we are a school-wide Title I school, and we serve a variety of students. We serve students that are homeless, and we serve students that are the children of Cal Berkeley law professors, et cetera. We have a wide range of ethnicities. We have over 21 different languages spoken here at John Muir. And I believe it is the first school district to voluntarily desegregate. And that is something that we hold very near and dear to our hearts, and it's part of our core mission. And that's something that we continue on today. So we have a very diverse school, and we have very diverse programming. And we're also a full inclusion school, meaning that students with mild to moderate disabilities all the way up to severe disabilities are all mainstreamed in the same classrooms. And we work with instructional aides and instructional specialists to meet student needs. And it is a beautiful campus. We have a creek that runs through the campus. We also have a stand of redwoods. And the school was built in it was around 1910 or so. The school was built, and it's a historic landmark here in Berkeley. It's an old school, but a very beautiful school.
I've got to get myself out there one day. It does sound beautiful. Like Berkeley itself is a beautiful neighborhood. I can imagine you guys are lucky out there. It's such a great community. And one of the things that we came across and we were talking about was this whole devastation that COVID and the pandemic brought to every school, but particularly John Muir as well. What was the situation like 3 years ago? Right now, it sounds like everything is great, and it's so tempting sometimes to just imagine that that's always been true. But that wasn't really the case just a few years ago. Tell me a little bit more about that.
3 years ago, when I became principal of John Muir, I would say that the parents, the students, and the staff were, as happened all over the United States and all over the world, were just devastated by the pandemic. Berkeley, the year prior, had just started to do hybrid schooling where kids were coming in for a certain amount of hours each day. We had smaller classes, but it was by no means routine. And prior to that, it was all online. And so the community was gone because that was a necessity of COVID to keep everybody safe. And coming back and really reopening was really tough. And I remember my first meetings when I became principal with our PTA leadership. And I said, I really want to open up. I really want this to be a hub for the community like it was. And I believe elementary schools should be. And I want to plan program in the evening, and I want to have parents drop their kids off on the yard, and I want them to get to know us, their teachers. I want them to get to know me as a principal in person, not online. And I think community is really key to learning. And kids coming back still had a lot of problems with figuring out how to be with one another socially. I remember in that first year implementing a positive behavior system, PBIS, and have these golden paws: be safe, be respectful, be responsible, be an ally. We implemented an assembly every Friday to just start to build back our community because we forgot how to be a community and how to be a school. And parents were still struggling with sending kids to school. A lot of parents were still working from home. Many parents had become used to having their kids at home, and many parents were scared. So even the slightest sniffle, they were keeping kids at home. And in that first year, our chronic absenteeism rate was around 18%. And the year prior, it was around 20 to 25%. That means students that had missed 10% or more of the school year, that's almost a quarter of the students. And if kids aren't here, they're not learning. And so we implemented quite a few things in that first year and in that second year and in that third year to improve that attendance, to improve behavior, and then to improve our academics for our kids. Only about half of our students were at grade level in reading, and about half were at grade level in math. And when we disaggregated that by race and by socioeconomic status, there was a clear line of an achievement gap. And so it was a lot to come into as a new principal, but the community was really ready and the staff were really ready to open up and to really do what we're here to do, which is serve our kids and serve our community. And that was so tough during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So that's how it was when we started.
Were you the one that was responsible and given that decision to, hey, you know what, Paco, you're a new principal. You decide whether to open up or not.
Yeah, everybody was figuring it out, like how much were we going to open up? Some of my colleagues had the gates locked at the front. The parents had to actually leave the kids at the gate and not come on campus. And we're very close and didn't have many evening events or activities for parents, but I felt like it was really important to show that we could be a community and to be a community hub for the parents.
It really sounded like a really hard time. And when you first came in, you had academic challenges with only half of the kids at grade level. There was an achievement gap. You have the community just wasn't used to being together anymore. And you had chronic absenteeism. How did you and your team kind of decide what do we focus on? Because just it's so easy to be overwhelmed by all of this at one time.
Yeah. I think just recognizing the brutal facts and being really honest about those. And in the first staff meeting, I showed where John Muir was in comparison to the rest of the district. And it was one of the lowest achieving schools in the district. And I also showed where John Muir white students were in comparison to African American and Latino and low socioeconomic status students. And there was a massive achievement gap. And not only looking at the state assessments in reading and math for third, fourth, and fifth grade, but also looking at our first round of the dynamic indicators of early basic literacy or DIBELS, kindergarten, first, and second grade. And just showing the data and talking about where do we want to go as a community and having PTA meetings and talking about where do we want to go as a community, working with my leadership team, looking at data, talking about it, goal setting. And I've been the principal of, I think this is my third elementary school. And every elementary school that I had come into was high poverty and lots of issues that needed to be addressed. So for me, this wasn't something that I truly believed in my heart that we could do it. And I think just talking about that and making that thinking just very present and apparent in every meeting that I went to, and then galvanizing the PTA and saying, this is where we are. These are the resources that I need to start moving the dial for kids. And that includes giving enough resources to have English language arts extra instructors in classrooms, extra resources to have math extra instructors in classrooms. How can we open up our after school intramural program so that we can get kids here? So just really building a vision around where we are going, but very much grounded in data.
Got it. Grounding yourself in data that allowed you to face the facts almost and to be able to communicate the reality of the situation to all the relevant adults, the staff, PTA. And did that allow you to come together and plan a course of action to be able to change things? And how did you decide what to change first? Or did you figure out that, okay, maybe there's just one thing that we need to do that would change everything?
Yeah. The first 3 months of being a principal at a new school, you do a lot of listening and you ask a lot of questions, which is what I did, a lot of that. And getting to know the players who are at the table and who are the movers, who are the shakers, the leadership team, the PTA leadership. And then right around December is the time that you begin to start thinking about next year and also about what tweaks you can make in the current schedule and the current situation to start making a difference. And one of the things that we did is we looked at what are the highest achieving schools in Berkeley that look just like us, that have our same demographics, but they have far different results in assessments. And then I started talking to those principals because we meet every week as a principal team. And then I took a team of mine to go visit one of the highest achieving schools in the district, Ruth Actie. And we met with their principal and we met with their leadership team and their literacy coach. They took us around to all of their classrooms and we went, this is so organized. My team that went with me were so excited that they said, Paco, we want to present this at our next staff meeting. This is amazing. And I said, let's process it in our leadership team first, and then let's go to the staff meeting. And they presented what they learned at the leadership team. The leadership team was behind it. And then we presented it as a group to the staff and we let them see how this could actually work. And one of the bits of kind of special sauce of ours is having a guaranteed viable curriculum that everyone is using with a pacing guide. And so that was one of the first things in that first year. That was my hedgehog concept from the book Good to Great. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but the hedgehog concept is this concept that the hedgehog is just not very fast, not very ferocious, but it can do one thing really well. It can curl up in a ball and put out its spikes. So my hedgehog concept for that first year was, let's get really clear about what our curriculum is, our adopted curriculum, and let's get really good at teaching that. And let's measure how our students are doing given this common input of this curriculum. And then one of the keys that we learned from Ruth Actie was the schedule. And they had a system where they had their specialists pushing in at certain times in every classroom. And they had a really amazing master schedule and one of the best UDL schedules and plan with the staff behind it to really make it go. And people talk a lot about universal design, having a tier one kind of for everyone and a tier two and a tier three for giving more intensive instruction. But if you don't have a schedule that makes that work, and if you don't have personnel to make that work, and you don't have a budget to hire that personnel, or a budget to train that personnel, or the curricular materials for that personnel to use, or a data system for them to track what they're doing, it's not going to be very effective. And so we went about making sure that we had all four of those things in place as we went, as the plane was flying that first year. But in the second year, I went to my PTA and I said, I need $150,000 to make this work, to make all the things. I'm talking including PE programs and enrichment and other things. But the main thing that I wanted the PTA to support was 4 days a week, 30 minutes, an additional instructor in every classroom, kindergarten to 5th grade, to support reading. And 30 minutes, 4 days a week, math specialist to support math. And so we built that. We said, "This is what we need, and I'm gonna put all of my resources, all my Title I resources, any penny that I can beg, borrow, and steal from the district or from local taxes to make this happen." And the PTA got behind it. And they worked really hard to help us fundraise as well. But it was a matter too of just channeling everyone into a plan. Because when I first came, you might be a student with an IEP and you're being pulled out with a college student at the same time that your special ed teacher is trying to push in to give you extra resources or extra intervention. And then the college student is not working on the same thing that you're working on in the classroom, and the classroom teacher is not working on the same thing that your special ed teacher is. No one's talking, everything's confusing, and there's no kind of master schedule to show how all of this works. And building a master schedule in a way that really works for kids is I just cannot stress how important that is. And it was not necessarily easy to get every teacher on board because it meant giving up some autonomy. It meant the only time I can get the specialist into your room is maybe right after lunch. So if you feel like teaching reading right after lunch is not the best, you have to give up that preference in order for the whole system to work. And so it was a lot of negotiating and a lot of really working as a team and everyone coming together to make this whole thing work.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like quite a number of different challenging things that had to be done to even just lay the foundation of what needed to be done. Everything that you're talking about right now sounds like it was really just to get you to the starting point, of being able to do this change. In your memory, what was the hardest thing that you had to do? Was it coming up with the master schedule? Was it convincing the community of the budget and getting it passed? I don't know whether you had to involve the chief business officer at the, the district, but it sounds like you need quite a bit of work to get that done. Or was it to find the people, to the specialists that are going to be necessary, the manpower to be able to deliver? There's so many different challenges. What was the hardest?
Yeah, all of those things have to happen, all those things that you mentioned. I can talk about a few challenges. And I remember talking to my 4th and 5th grade teachers and telling them that they had an extra preparation period that was not contractual, where a PE teacher was coming in and taking their kids and teaching PE, and they didn't have to teach PE. And that was great. It was a nice benefit. But I wanted to take that money that was being used to support the PE teacher teaching their PE for them and have them teach their PE and use that money to pay for a reading specialist. That wasn't very popular. And so there was a lot of conversations about that and about why it was really important, given our data, given the fact that only half the kids were at benchmark in reading, what we needed to do to get there. So that was a tough conversation. And then also the conversation around me taking much more control of their schedules on when things were happening. For some, that was really hard, who wanted to have more autonomy. And a system does not work if everybody is not part of that system and making it work. But because overwhelmingly the staff wanted to do this and we had multiple staff votes on moving forward with this, eventually we got there. And now I'm at a point where my PTA is being able to raise enough and our assessment, how our students are achieving academically, has moved enough that we're actually adding that PE back for my 4th and 5th grade teachers. And we're actually adding an art teacher as well through some Prop 28 money. It's a silver lining to that. But I clearly remember being here in my office and that really tough conversation and that staff meeting.
So, what do you think was the most convincing data point that you shared that helped to move the needle for you? Because human beings, we're so emotional generally, and we tend to gravitate towards data that supports our inherent underlying views already. And so to be able to tell a good story with data in a way that's convincing and can persuade is a rare art, I would say. What do you feel was the main data point that supported your argument and was able to move the needle for you in those conversations?
I think just saying, look, only 50% of the kids here are meeting benchmark, and pretty much the same demographic up the road is achieving significantly higher, 20 or 30 percentage points higher, and across demographics. And we're all here to support kids, and we all want to do the best that we can for kids. And so that's the data point there. But another data point is this is all of the resource that we have to put towards solving this problem. So you're not in this by yourself. And this is the schedule that will make that happen. And anything that you need, I'll work my tail off to get for you. So it's providing the support to get what everybody wants. And I think that who doesn't want 90% of their kids reading at benchmark by the end of the school year? I think sometimes if you're not clear on what the goal is, it, it's hard to achieve it. Not sometimes, I think all the time. So the goal is 90%. So
Yeah.
if winter we're at 75%, we've got a ways to go. So
Wow.
everybody pulls together.
It's awesome that you managed to get everyone within the staff and the PTA to rally around this goal of getting ideally every kid to benchmark and beyond. And I'm just imagining from for many parents, they're not really concerned about 90%. They're mostly concerned about is my kid at benchmark? And so like having to rally and convince them to think as a community, that must not have been easy.
One of the things that was interesting is a number of my PTA leaders had students that were not at benchmark and hadn't really realized that. And then actually in that first year saw we started sending home the Dibbles reports, and we started having meetings with parents and saying, "Hey, your kid's not at benchmark. This is what we want to do. This is what we can do. This is what you can do." And so the PTA started having conversations like, "Whoa, this team at John Muir wants to help my kid become a better reader. And this is what they're doing. Yes, I support that." And an amazing story is I just finished our parent survey, which about 35% of our parents responded, which is pretty good for a voluntary survey. And their top desires for the PTA to fund were reading, math, reading support, math support, and art in that order. And oftentimes PTAs it's art, it's enrichment, it's field trips, it's computers. It's not having to do with instruction. So I feel like we've done a good job of communicating and then showing the data that we can move the needle for kids.
Yeah, that's incredible. And for all of these efforts, you guys were awarded the US Department of Education Blue Ribbon Award and also the California Distinguished School Award. For those of us who may not be familiar, these awards are big deals. Tell us just how big a deal these are.
Yeah. That was a huge honor for the school. The US Department of Education Blue Ribbon School Award is the highest honor that a school can achieve that is given by the federal government. And we were invited to apply a couple Februaries ago based on our outstanding student achievement. And it was about a 40-page application where they really dug into the whole school and they wanted to see what our parent outreach was like, what our staff engagement, our leadership structures, our schedules, our curriculum, our enrichment, and just our student achievement. We had to have a certain level of student achievement in order to be nominated. And then we won that award, and that was a huge honor. And then just last month, we won the California Distinguished Schools Award, which is the highest honor that an elementary school can achieve in the state of California. And that was based on student achievement. But we also remember I talked about we went from 20% chronic absenteeism down to 7%, which was the second best attendance rate in the whole district and one of the best in the states. We went from an indicator around suspensions to having no suspensions and having alternatives to suspension. And our student achievement increased by about 20 percentage points. So those two things were a huge honor for the school, just and felt like a real recognition of all of the hard work that we have been putting in to build community, to help every student achieve at high levels, and to help every student get to school and be a part of the community.
Yeah, that's such an honor and a privilege to have that just recognition of the efforts that you guys have put in. And it sounds like the work continues and in fact is just going to continue gathering steam as you build on all the foundations that you've already laid. Let's talk a little bit about the behavior and attendance side of things. You talked about suspension going to close to zero, if not zero, chronic absenteeism going to less than 6%. These didn't come from changing the master schedule. How did that come about?
Again, it's recognizing the brutal facts and the brutal fact that almost 20% of our students were chronically federally truant. We felt like we have to communicate early and we have to communicate often. And we have to really let parents know that elementary school is important and being here every day is important. So we developed a number of different kinds of letters that talked about the importance of attending and the data that shows that if kids are chronically federally truant early on, even in kindergarten, how that can affect them for the rest of their school career. And lots of personal phone calls from me, which are uncomfortable but important. Just, hey, I'm noticing that Johnny has been missing quite a few days, and we're only 3 months into the school year, and he's missed almost 10% of the school year. Oh, Johnny's been sick. Oh, I understand. That's hard. If you take him to the doctor, maybe there's something that they can do. And we found out some kids have got some chronic asthma. They've gotten medication that has been helpful. And just many times the conversations go, parents go, what? 10%? Really? I had no idea. And so we make goals, make attendance contracts, and even sometimes with kids, there's some school refusal and making deals like, hey, every day that you make it this week, you earn a star. And at the end of the week, you've got 5 stars, you get to choose a prize from the prize box. And really working to make school fun. And then at the end of the school year, we send out a letter to everyone who's been chronically truant. Just, hey, it was a tough year and this is your number of absences. And then next year, we're really looking forward to this improving. And then at the start of the next school year, last school year, this was an issue, but we know that this is a new school year and a new leaf. So we're really looking forward to this being better and just really talking about attendance. And then also, we partnered with a group called Everyday Pro, which is a nonprofit, and highly recommend them. They're amazing. They're a whole online platform that's very easy to use and easy to read. They send text messages, text nudges to parents when attendance hits certain levels. They send color letters around attendance. And they also say, the average attendance right now in the third grade is 94%. Your child's attendance right now is 88%. These are some things that you can do to help improve attendance. Here are some phone numbers that you can call to help get support. And that Everyday Pro, which is just constantly making sure that attendance is staying front and center, is just been key. And then I have an amazing secretary, probably the best secretary in the world, who really follows up. She keeps very accurate records. And I think there's just a culture that attendance is important. And we've got some posters around the school saying that attendance is important. So that was really big for that attendance level. And then suspensions and school climate. I really believe that suspensions don't solve anything. And most of the time, they tend to make things much worse. Tells children and parents that we can't handle you. So we're going to send you home and send you out versus keeping you here. So I think that having things like restorative justice circles, restorative conversations, having parent meetings, coming up with behavior plans, having buddy classes or in school activities that kids need to do to be here. It keeps them part of the community, keeps them engaged. And so that's something that we really work hard on. We have a cost team, which is coordination of services, and we meet every Thursday morning. Teachers can refer kids or we can refer kids. So kids who are starting to have some behavior problems, we bring them to the table, we talk about them. We have a behaviorist, we have a counselor, we have special ed teachers. So constantly talking about kids, working on things, working to figure it out has been one of our big keys to really having good school climate.
That makes a lot of sense. And I like the consistency of the approach between how you're dealing with attendance and having that focus on being in school and the resultant philosophy on suspensions, because it's very consistent that to help the kid, rather than sending them away, they should stay with you, right? You and your staff take responsibility to work with the kid through the challenges that they have. And it's amazing that your cost team meets every Thursday. And it sounds like you're then able to get the best possible resources across the school and bring them to bear on the students that need them the most,
Mhm.
essentially. And through all of this, what do you feel has been attitude of the staff and your team as they've seen this turnaround come to fruition? You talked about them like at feeling very raring to go at the end of COVID, like wanting to open up. Do you feel like you've been able to deliver on that desire of theirs? And how do you see things moving forward?
Yeah, I think that everyone likes to be part of a winning team. No one wants to be a part of a school that, oh, this is a real bummer to come and work here. And our students aren't achieving very well. And we're suspending a lot of kids, and a lot of kids don't want to come to school. And our PTA is not really behind us. That's a hard place to go to work every day. The staff here is really amazing. They really want to be here. And this is one of the things I love about elementary school teachers. They really believe in holding their class and keeping their children safe and keeping their kids connected and making sure that they're having a good experience. And I think success begets success. If 90% is our goal and we're at 75, then what resources do we need to bring to bear to get to 90? If 7% is our goal on attendance and we're at 9% of chronic absenteeism, what do we need to do to get there? I think that we all know and we all believe that we can do it. And we want to continue to be a high functioning school because teachers like to work in a place that is functioning well. Second grade teachers love first grade teachers who have taught their kids their early basic literacy. Fourth grade teachers love third grade teachers that have done the same thing. Teachers love other teachers that have consistent discipline policies and back each other up. Those are places that people want to teach in. And those are places that parents want to send their kids to school. And that's a culture that we have developed. Now, there's bumps along the road all the time, every single day. But I have a leadership team that meets every other week. As a staff, we have 2 hours every Wednesday that we meet to collaborate and do professional development. I've got literacy coaches, I've got a math coach, I've got special educators who are all wanting to support. And so I think everyone is really bought into the idea of making a wonderful place for kids to come and learn and live and grow up and care about each other.
It's such an incredible turnaround story. In 3 short years, it certainly sounds like John Muir is a completely different place. And students want to be there, staff want to be there, parents want their kids to be there. Just reflecting on that journey, if you had one short piece of advice that you would share to an administrator, principal in a similar situation, what would you tell them?
Build relationships. Relationships are key to everything. and then just have a laser-like focus on student achievement.
Building relationships and having a laser focus on student achievement, because that unlocks everything else pretty much.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Thank you so much, Paco, for sharing your incredible story with us today. And to all of you listening, thank you for listening. I hope you have been as inspired as I am to hear about John Muir Elementary. And for those of you who are close enough to drop by, like, I know I will.
You're invited anytime, CT.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Paco, for joining us. And thank you all of you for listening. Once again, I've been your host today, CT, and I'm signing off.
Thanks, CT.
And that's a wrap on today's Principal Office Hours. Before you rush off to put out the next school emergency, take 2 seconds to subscribe. It's way easier than getting your budget approved. And if you like what you heard, head over to principalofficehours.com to sign up for weekly updates on the show. Also, the best compliment would be to tell your friends about us, especially the ones who look like they need therapy or a career change. We're going to be back with fresh principal insights and inspiration every week. Until then, keep being the leader that your ID badge says that you are. See you next time.